So good morning and welcome to the Cyber Agony Uncles for January 2025. Happy New Year
Yeah,
and all the
yeah.
rest of it. So I'm Uncle Stevie.
And I'm Uncle Rich. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year to you all.
So Rich, what is our question for this session?
This month we've got a good one, so I'm just going to read it out. And it says as follows: Dear Agony Uncles, favourite podcast in brackets, thank you very much. I work in a SOC delivering SecOps to public sector clients, but I'm increasingly troubled by the poor quality of the service we're providing. I've tried raising my concerns internally, but the response has been dismissive, along the lines of, not your job to worry about it. I feel like I've ruffled feathers and don't want to put a target on my back, but I can't shake the feeling that our customers aren't getting what they're paying for. One manager even admitted the customer knows, but brushed me off, saying I don't understand the bigger picture. It feels like they're just humouring me. I genuinely lose sleep over this because of the nature of the customers. And while I've fantasized about whistleblowing, I'm not sure if I can or should. Definitely couldn't move to Russia. With only 2 years of experience and no real influence, is there anything I can do to improve things without making myself a scapegoat? Or should I just keep my head down and let it go?
Ooh, now there's an interesting question. There's a lot to unpack in that, isn't there?
Oh, there,
Um,
there, there really is.
yeah,
Absolutely.
where does one begin? I think maybe the starting point could for thinking about this could be that the focus and corporate level motivation for a lot of providers is often not on the security of their customers. No, we're in some kind of thorny area here, but I am aware that in a lot of service providers, the internal focus is on profitability, P&L, effectively, of a particular account,
Yeah.
and is the quality of the service delivered to the customer sits lower in the order of priorities than the P&L of that particular deal with that customer, which leads to or can, doesn't have to, but it can lead to some very odd decisions being made, and pressure being put on people to do things because there's too much time spent on X, it's too expensive doing Y. Surely you can cut your costs in this particular area because basically we're not making enough margin on that particular customer. Um, that is tricky. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I agree totally. There's also potentially a gap between what's agreed contractually and what you'd consider to be doing your best work.
Yeah.
So the management of this security provider might well be saying work to the letter of the contract, not the spirit of the contract.
Yeah,
And that would be a valid approach potentially. I mean, not,
absolutely. Yeah.
not necessarily one I would choose. I would rather over deliver potentially. Um, but yeah, I can see some management types making that decision to run on a bare bone shoestring, in not only in terms of headcount but in terms of productivity, in order to maximize profits. Absolutely.
Yeah, because that touches on like the second point that jumps out at me there is that this particular person who's sent in this question has got 2 years of experience. Now, with 2 years of experience in a service provider, and undoubtedly this person is good at understanding the cyber side of things and the
Yeah.
security side of things. You're quite right in that what might actually the complete set of things that might be required in order to fully secure their customer may go well beyond what's being done. But it may well be that the customer has not asked for or isn't paying for all of those things.
Yeah.
They have got effectively a subset of that. There's what's the full universe of potential things you could do? It's pretty big.
Yeah,
There'll be
absolutely.
a subset of that which is associated with this particular contract. It does sound like that they may have a managerial challenge in this organisation, that if people who are in that sense a little bit more junior in the organisation don't understand what the delivery expectations are fully, and are looking at that saying, well, okay, you've not defined what we're supposed to be doing, so I'm looking at this as what's the full universe of things that could be done, and we're not doing it well enough, and surely we should be doing better. But the answer is, well, actually, you've probably not made it clear that we do X in this space. Whilst we could do all these other things, that's not what we've been asked to do by the customer. That's not what they want us to do, and it's unclear from the question whether we're talking about um, a particular service which is being overpromised and underdelivered, or whether we're talking about a situation where, in order to fully secure the customer, the things that need to be done go beyond what's actually been agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there has been a comment from this person's management saying that this person isn't necessarily aware of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that might well be very, very true. Not all organizations are particularly transparent. There might be wider things at play. And that frankly go above a person with 2 years experience is pay grade.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, this is why it becomes a bit thorny, because I know just from experience, been in the game for long enough to have gone very grey. But there are organisations that genuinely do a pretty poor job in the background. There's a lot of the sort of swan effect that goes on, and sometimes the swans are really actually drowning. And there are also organisations that are fully aware of the fact that they should be doing, or they could be doing more. And if they were to be doing more, it would have a very significant improvement in the security posture of the customer. But the customer just doesn't get it, or doesn't want to engage, or just does things in a different way. And it's not clear from this where we are on that scale.
No, absolutely. I mean, conversely, the management might just be relying on the fact that they're on a preferred supplier list now with these public sector bodies, and therefore they're going to win and re-win this contract year on year, and genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mediocre, not just MSSPs but also MSPs out there. Providing less than stellar services, but they know full well that they will get a contract renewed year on year. And never push to improve, and just sit there being complacent, taking the money. That could be what's happening here potentially.
Oh, definitely. I mean, again, from experience, sorry if some of the people listening are sort of work in the public sector, but public sector procurements in IT, and certainly in cyber, is an absolute shambles. It almost guarantees that public sector organisations don't get a good service at a reasonable price. And a lot of that's built into the way the contracts are created. I know in certain sectors the regulator is a government body, even if the organisations that, like the actual customer organisations, are sort of hands off from the government. But because of the way they're regulated, the regulator has said, well, if we don't like the way you're doing it, we're going to pull your contracts, we're going to take back your franchise, kind of thing, that sort of stuff. In which case that gets passed on to third-party suppliers. So third-party suppliers busily negotiate things on we'll give you a discount for 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. But when you look at the T's and C's, it says, well, we'll stop paying you tomorrow if we don't like it. If we can have the rug pulled out from under our feet. So the suppliers, we're going to factor in that there's a risk that we might not even get a full first year, let alone a third year. So rather than give you a discount for a multi-year deal, we're going to double the costs because you've increased our risk. And nobody seems to understand the consequences of that sort of stuff. Within the public sector environment, so there's just a lot of very poor stuff out there. And then as you say, this whole concept of you've got to be on a particular list in order to do business with public sector organizations. I forget the name. You know the name of this, don't you, Rich? The what is it, the process you go through to be a small supplier?
Oh, now you're asking, it completely escapes me, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, there is this go to this portal and sign up. Well, you look at what you have to do in the portal,
Yeah,
and
I think
it's
it's
like,
more on the
what?
findatender.gov or
Yeah,
something.
something like that. Yeah. Why would you bother? So anything that you put on, anything you tender for, your tender then becomes publicly visible on that platform, and that you are contractually restricted from making any changes to the commercials or the tender once it's been agreed. So your pricing is out there, your service is out there. You can't make any changes to anything. You just why would you bother? Some organizations do very well out of it, but they tend to be people that are focusing specifically on delivering to public sector, and they understand and have worked out how to make money out of the mess.
Yeah.
The rest of us look at this and go, oh my god, let's go and put our effort into something that isn't going to be this painful.
Yeah, and let's be honest, half of the time you're going to be going against a massive incumbent, someone like, I don't know, Fujitsu or whatever.
Yeah.
And they can throw resources at it when it comes to renewal time in a way that most other businesses can't. And if there's just two massive companies on a preferred supplier list, the public sector bodies involved might well just switch from one to the other if they're not getting what they want, and still end up with a mediocre service. But in which case, where's the value in that? Where's the real choice?
No, exactly. So, we kind of strayed a little, but there are a lot of things that make this a very difficult question to deal with. The fact it's public sector, first of all, means there's no guarantee that the contracts really are delivering what's needed. They'll be delivering what's been agreed. It's possible that this particular service is overpromised and underdelivered, but you can't tell. It may have been effectively just underpromised. And it may well be that the person who's raised the question is having information withheld from them around what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So there may be a lack of internal transparency there. I mean, all I would say is to this person, look, yeah, although there are protections about whistleblowing, you have to be really certain that there's been inappropriate actions or inappropriate behavior before going down that route, because if you whistleblow because there's something that's actually genuinely wrong and that people are undertaking illegal activities within the organization, that's kind of one thing, and that's you should be lauded for doing that. If your organization is just not listening to you, saying, I don't think we're doing a very good job, where will that leave you? Is anything likely to change? I think perhaps if you're really uncomfortable with working in the way that you're being asked to work, maybe that's not the right organization for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in their shoes, I would be deeply concerned about whistleblowing on the basis that they're too potentially junior to have seen the contract, to know what the company's been committed to, and therefore they might just simply be terminating their own job, frankly.
Yeah, I fully get it that that's kind of not the answer that most people would like to hear under these circumstances. But I think trying to manage upwards around what's being done may be a good idea. So if you don't get it and you feel like that your organization should be doing better, try to get somebody to explain to you why things are not being done that way, and not just brush you off with you just don't get it. Right,
Yeah.
I don't get it, but what do I not get? Help me here, because if I'm thinking this, there's probably a bunch of other people in the organisation that are thinking this as well. So we can improve morale by a little bit more clarity here, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And most line managers are genuinely and generally receptive to suggestions on process improvements,
Oh yeah,
things like that. So why not try and improve things from where you're seeing issues from your vantage point, and push them up the chain? It only takes one real bright idea to affect complete organizational change
yeah,
potentially.
absolutely. Depends on the culture of the organisation, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, I've worked in places where you might have a means by which you could double the productivity and halve the cost, but you can never get it anywhere because nobody wants to listen. I'll take your ideas and go, go and do something better somewhere else in that case. Or it may just be that nobody's really thought about it. And if you do actually say, well, we can improve X, Y, and Z, they'll look at it and go, oh, actually, that's a really good idea. Never thought of that. Let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Clayton. I see you've posted a couple of comments. The top of which is money. And yes, you're right. Money and resourcing, in terms of headcount and things, absolutely does have a bearing on what a company can do to service their contracts.
Yeah.
100%. And you're right. Then this whole issue where this junior person feels like the company's underperforming in their area might well be down to a lack of resourcing. It
Mm.
might be that, I mean, some companies take on contracts as a loss leader. So
Yeah.
I've seen companies take on a household name customer despite making no margin on it, purely to help with their own brand awareness and further other sales activities. So
Yeah. I mean,
you're,
that does go on. But I mean, but one thing the one thing that I'm very firm about is that there's a point at which service and commercials separate,
yeah,
and need to be kind of almost ring fenced from each other. Um, and the reason is that if you have agreed to do something for a customer, it comes back down to the customer has a need, you have an ability to fulfill that need, or you have the ability to address that risk, or whatever it might be. So you've got this agreement, you've got this alignment between the provider and the customer. You then need to actually do it, because that's what builds trust, and that's what builds good long-term relationships and solid relationships. Those are the foundations of a good solid finances within your provider organization, not anything else. So if it's been taken on as a loss leader, that shouldn't have an impact on service.
no, it really shouldn't. Because don't forget, contracts and delivering on those contracts are a matter of trust with
Yeah,
legal backing.
yeah, absolutely.
You don't get a contract signed without trust and faith that it will be delivered upon,
Yeah,
and then the signatures then say that this is legally binding on top of
yeah,
that.
and no, absolutely. And and there's absolutely nothing wrong with, as a provider, making an agreement that on a particular thing you're going to cut your margins. You may even, actually, it's fairly rare, I think, the reality that people
Yeah.
really make a genuine loss on stuff, but you may be doing things at very tight margins because there's something more going on there, or whatever it might be. But that shouldn't then be used as an excuse for delivering a poor service in the background. I mean, one of the things you did touch on there about resourcing, I think, is a very good point. And perhaps it's something that is worth being aware of if you're on the purchasing side of services, certainly in the MSSP SOC kind of arena. One of the questions that rarely gets asked is, what's the ratio of customers to analysts? So effectively, how many customers does a particular analyst on shift at any one time have to look after? That can range from, there's in fact an entire SOX team's worth of people looking after a single customer, through to it's just a big pool with 10, 15, 20, sometimes even more, 25, 30 customers whose alerts are all just pouring in and have got to be sifted through, and you sort of hope in the background that the right things come to the, float to the surface. So whilst the contract says, yes, we'll have somebody looking at your stuff, say 24/7, what does that actually mean is a good question to ask. So, that's I think probably my useful comment of this session. Get an idea about how your particular contract is going to be resourced within your MSSP. Ask the difficult question around how many other customers is this team going to be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. From a purchasing side, it can be hard to even know what the right questions to ask are.
Yeah.
When if you're going through a tender process and you're looking at proposals from 3, 4, 5, sometimes even up to 9, we've seen in some processes from companies. They're not all necessarily like for like, and how the questions you ask in order to sort of almost standardize those responses, those proposals, are absolutely key and very, very important. Now, going back to this junior analyst that feels slightly disillusioned, it might be that there are no bells and whistles on that service. It might be what you see is what you get, and they are delivering adequately. So yeah, absolutely. I think I would stop short of whistleblowing, but I think all in all, I would try and affect some change or ask if change is possible to their line management.
Yeah,
and go from there.
And I think in the end, if it's just not coming together, and you really feel like that you're the provider is chasing the money and not focused on the security of their customers, there are better places you could work. It's unfortunately some of these issues are common, but they're not all pervasive. There are plenty of provider organizations out there that really do understand that their role in this is not to go make as much money as possible. Their role is to make their customers secure, because they're going to be absolutely fine from a financial perspective if they do that.
Absolutely. And that isn't necessarily tied into the maturity or the age of the organization. It's very much a company values and ethos proposition, really, because we know that there are some huge security businesses out there who have excellent, almost weaponized sales teams, and who do still under-deliver. And it's a commercial decision potentially made at the very, very top of the company. So, yeah, as I said, age and maturity of business has very little to do with actually wanting to deliver great work at whatever price point they're priced at.
Yeah. I think we've probably covered as much as we can cover
I think so.
with this one.
I'm now getting into the realms of being at risk of repeating myself. So
Yeah. No. So yeah, very tricky one. Very tricky one. No simple answers to that. But as we say, don't give up hope. Even if it's not going well in this organisation, it could go well elsewhere. And if you as you gain more time and experience with more contracts, you'll get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Learn from the learn from the good and the bad, as it were.
Yeah.
So learn how things can be done well, but also what to avoid at all costs in the future. Take that stuff and build your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you again next month.
Yeah, thanks.